5A state playoffs. Covington will host Thibodeau this Friday night at 7 p.m. at Jack Salter Stadium. Of course, he's the grandson of the legendary Jack Salter, and it's great to have him with us today. Please give a warm welcome to Covington head coach Greg Salter. Greg?
I'd like to start off by thanking y'all for having me. It's very humbling and a huge honor for me to be here. I see every week the different coaches that y'all put on this stage, and to even be mentioned in the same breath throughout the season, and it's mind-boggling to me. To tell you a little bit about myself, I graduated from Covington High in 1996. I played football and baseball. My senior year was actually my grandfather's last year coaching at Covington High. And that was when I started to develop the passion or the idea that I wanted to be a football coach. I didn't realize how important he was. To me, he was just my grandfather. But I would constantly see former players come back, want to share stories about their children or their wives or their, just whatever ventures in life they had. And he took so much pride in that. And I saw that, and I knew it was something that it just seemed like such a rewarding profession. And then I was able to, in 2001, get hired at Covington High. And it was a dream come true. It was the only place I ever wanted to be. And during that first year, just to give you a tidbit about how far I've come as a coach, my first task in 2001, our head coach, Allie Smith, sent me to scout our opponent coming up from the next week. We do the scouting, and I had no clue what I was doing. I went with a notebook, and I was going to take all these notes and everything else. And the team I was scouting was playing against Skylar Green. So I got back to the field house, and Coach Smith, all right, what'd you get for me? So, well, Coach, I got good news and bad news. He said, well, give me the bad news. So I handed him the empty notebook. I had absolutely nothing. I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. And he said, well, what's the good news? I said, well, we don't have to play Skylar Green. So that, we're good to go there. We don't have to tackle him. So already I like our chances for next week, Coach. So, but it's been a fun road for me. I've learned so much from all the coaches that I've been around. And then everything culminated in 2013. I was named the head coach. It was something I never thought would happen. I knew I always wanted to be a head coach. I never thought I would be so fortunate to do it at Covington High, and in a place where my grandpa had, walked the sidelines in the stadium that bared his name. Immediately I got the questions about, carrying on that, carrying on the Salter name, making him proud, and I knew immediately that that wasn't something that I was going to concern myself with. I figured it was a win-win. Either I'm successful and he'll be proud and that name will look good, or I flop and he looks even better. So it was a win-win. But I took it. I did the best I could. That first year I had a great group of seniors that bought in immediately. And we were able to make a run. We took some bumps in the road, but once we got into the playoffs, we made a run through the playoffs and ended up losing a 1-point game to Brandon Harris and Parkway in the semifinals. But a great experience, and that kind of laid the foundation for what I think where we are today. Like Mr. Trahan said, we're currently sitting at 10-0. We just won our first district championship since 2004, and that was our first undefeated regular season since 1988. And one of our local media guys, David Foles, took the fact that I was the ball boy in 1988. He ran with that, put it in the paper, and I don't think I clarified the fact that I was the absolute worst ball boy in the history of Covington High. I never brought one ball onto the field. I did it for about 6 years, but I spent my time just tagging along behind my grandpa, getting in his way. I was probably more of a nuisance than I was an asset. He was trying to keep me clear on the sidelines, keep me from running out on the field. And then I spent the rest of my time just ogling over the players. Those were the guys that I looked up to. And I have a couple of those guys from that 88 team that are on my staff right now that, it's so surreal, this whole ride. And I'm so blessed. And, we started off this season, we knew we had a lot of potential, but all potential is just something on paper. You know, we had a great senior class, a lot of 3-year starters, a running back that's a 4-year starter. And so we knew we had potential, but to see it through and to win 10 games, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. And it takes a lot of talent. It takes great coaching staff, which I have, and it takes some luck. I mean, we won week 2, a 6-0 game against Holy Cross. We turned around the next week and played Dutchtown and had a 6-point lead and made a tackle on the 1-yard line, you know, to end the game. You know, that game could have gone either way. St. Paul was another tight game where we won 21-20. It was a game we were winning 21-7 at halftime, and we found ourselves in the exact same situation a year ago. And I told our kids at halftime that, you know, I felt like the reason we lost the year before was so we could win the one tonight. And our kids, you know, weathered the storm and ended up, you know, finishing on top. And from then on, each week just got harder and harder. And I expect it to get, you know, even harder this week with Thibodeau coming to town. But we're very excited about the possibilities. We're very excited about the challenge. And again, I can't tell you how blessed I am to represent Covington High School and the community, and most importantly, that senior class I have. So, you know, if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer anything.
That first year, state semis, you're a brand new head coach. What do you think you've learned from that first year that's going to make you better and maybe apply those lessons this year, considering the 2 seed, very high expectations? What do you hope to have learned from that?
I think the main thing with me, you know, and I had that question after that season where people were just asking, you know, saying, great job, coach, what did you do? And I was just standing there scratching my head. I had no idea. I had no idea, you know, what we had done, what we had accomplished till you really step back. And looking back on it, I think that's why we were successful. We literally took everything one game at a time. At the time, Covington High hadn't won a playoff game in, I think it was 13 years at the time. We had been one and done in the playoffs every year. Some of those years not even making it. And, you know, so while we certainly had expectations inside the locker room, you know, we never were allowed to look too far ahead because our kids just had never experienced that. So we did. We took it one game at a time. We just happened to be playing our best ball when it counted most. And that's something that, you know, this year we really harped on. And fortunate enough, again, with a senior class and experienced group, you know, they've followed those guidelines as far as taking every game one game at a time. And hopefully we'll continue to do that.
Hey, Coach. This year, it seems like your personality has changed since in the years past. I mean, I've enjoyed working your sidelines this year. I mean, I guess it's because you're winning and you've got a good program, and so I want to congratulate you on that. So, but what I noticed about your team, you have a very dynamic offense and a bunch of playmakers. But the two that stood out to me was your wide receiver and your running back that you mentioned earlier. Talk a little bit more about them and what schools are looking at those two players. Okay,
sure. Well, we'll start off with the you know, the obvious one is Devin Brumfield. Devin Brumfield is our running back. He started, you know, his first carry for me ever was his freshman year in a Holy Cross game, week 1, and I had a senior running back who did outstanding things for us, had an outstanding career as well. Devin got in at the end of the game in the 4th quarter. Yeah, it was a tight game, and he ripped one off for 80 yards. That was his first carry of his career. Since then, he has rushed he just eclipsed the other night, 6,000 yards. 6,000 yards, he has over 70 touchdowns. He has every record, every rushing record at the school, and there's been some great, I mean, there's been All-American running backs. I think there's been 19 or 20 all-state running backs over the last 50 years. I mean, it's just such a storied tradition. And for him to be the guy that's at the top of the list, you know, just speaks volumes for him. And, you know, and I tell people, as good of a player as he is, he's an even better person. He's a guy that has never missed a day. And I think Mr. Daniel said that on Friday Night Football, and I have to clarify, he hasn't practiced every day. You know, he's taken his bumps and bruises and had to, you know, sit out a couple practice, but he has never missed a day in 4 years, whether it be summer workouts, 7-on-7s, which we're not throwing the ball in 7-on-7s, which drive, you know, running back nuts. But he's just been such such a pleasure to coach, such a pleasure to be around, and you know, I mean, I think the world of him. He has a handful of offers right now. He's a Texas Tech commit. Coach DeLuke began forming a relationship with him as a freshman, and has seen it through all the way to the end. You know, so we're really excited about his future. I believe the receiver, we actually have 2 receivers, but I believe the one you're referring to is probably Keyshawn Baptiste, number 2. Keyshawn got a little playing time as a freshman as well. He's another 3-year starter. He's a kid that always had the ability, but he lacked I don't think he had the confidence or the self-discipline to push himself to be the type of player that he was capable of being. And that's one of those great things about, you know, high school coaching at this level, is seeing a kid like that finally realize how special he is after telling him 1,000 times, and then him seeing that through and developing a work ethic and allowing himself to reach his full potential. And he has done that. I'm proud of him. You know, Keyshawn is going to be he's going to go the JUCO route. He just recently this week picked up an offer from Butler. There's a handful of Mississippi JUCOs that are knocking down the door for him, but somebody's going to get an absolute steal with him. And then another guy, our quarterback, has had a fantastic year. He started halfway through his sophomore year, and has just. He had some growing pains. He started off with a bang as a sophomore. He went 4-1 in his 5 games he started. His junior year, he had some ups and downs. He was never any less of a player. He always had the potential to be great, and he showed flashes of it, but he just lacked a little bit of consistency, and that comes with experience. And he got that experience, and this year, and I told a reporter outside last week, I just did something just absolutely just dumb. We were 4th and 5 on our own 40, down 7-0, and we throw a pass on 4th and 5. Not the smartest thing to do, but I knew the kid was going to throw it to the right guy. I knew Keyshawn was going to make the catch, and I didn't think twice about it until after I got home and my dad let me know how stupid that was. But it worked out. But it's just he's come through, and all these guys over time have just developed our trust, and to be able to do things like that again just speaks to volumes of the kids we have, and it's just been a great year. And then the other thing offensively too I want to touch on is our offensive line. We returned 4 out of 5 guys on our offensive line. They're kind of the unsung heroes, and that common denominator, whether it be Devin running the ball, Josh throwing it, Keyjohn, Elgin, Mason catching the passes, the common denominator in that is the offensive line. So they deserve a ton of credit too. Okay. One more.
All right. I've been told I asked too many offensive questions. So your defense obviously has had an outstanding year. Just talk about some of the players that have just really stepped up, and you got a lot of healthy players back this year.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you touched on that, because after I finished talking there and realized I did not touch on the defense, I could get myself in trouble. One of the best decisions I made when I became the head coach, and my grandpa told me, it all starts with assembling your staff. And I have a younger brother that was at Salmon, who was working with the defense over at Salmon with Coach Jerry Leonard, who's one of the best defensive minds in our area. And that was the first guy that I brought over, was my brother, to coach our defense. So him and his staff have done a fantastic job. It didn't take long for him to earn my trust. I trusted him as it was, but I was a defensive coach too. And I was constantly throwing ideas at him that first year. In week 3, we played against St. Aug, and Leonard Fournette came to Covington High. And I still pick with Leonard when I see him and tell him that we shut him down. My brother's game plan shut him down. We held him to 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that was his lowest game of the year. And after that, I left my brother alone, let him do his job, and that was the best thing I could do, was just get out of the way. As far as the players, we returned, I want to say 5 starters from last year, and some really good players. And then we had a handful of guys that had gotten reps last year, that we had total confidence in. And then we had a guy our leading tackler, our middle linebacker, is a kid that going into his sophomore year was going to be the starting middle linebacker. During the offseason in the summer, he was clowning around at the river, jumped in, and ended up fracturing a vertebrae in his neck. So he didn't play for 2 years. Last year, you know, and his dad was an all-state linebacker for my grandfather, and he, you know, they were dead set. He was going to play football again, and you know, we certainly hoped that would happen, but we weren't holding our breath on it. And he got cleared at the end of last season. We talked him into waiting until this year. He did everything in his power to get back out. He strengthened his neck. He worked out like an animal for 2 years, all for this 1 year. And he has been just an absolute blessing to have, you know, another one of those guys, just a blessing to have out there. He brings so much to our team, and his name's Darren Thompson. He's been he was kind of a missing link. But that whole defense is a mentality. And you know, we don't have the biggest guys in the world on defense, but man, they play hard, they play fast, and they play aggressive. And that's all you can ask for of 11 guys going after the ball. Again, just another portion of that team that is making me look like I know what I'm doing and allowing me to speak at things like this. That's it. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.